Hey guys, thanks for joining me today. We'll be doing a little bit of a discussion on oxUSD today, just trying to give you a bit of an update about where we are with the development and some of the things that we're thinking about as well, and trying to bring the community more in for some of the discussion here. So we've been thinking about a few things here, and there's a few kind of ways that different projects do it. One of the ways is to have a basket of assets. For example, you could have some Bitcoin, some Ethereum, and then you have a pricing oracle, which essentially measures that Bitcoin and Ethereum against the price of the US dollar, or at least their pricing in the US dollar. And then you can have people loan out that it would be Ethereum and Bitcoin in that scenario, and create new stablecoins pegged to that value. So when the value of Ethereum or Bitcoin goes up or down, or especially down in this scenario, a little bit of it gets sold to maintain the peg to the stablecoin. So this is kind of how DAI works. It has a basket of these assets, Ethereum and Bitcoin. We're thinking more of using an existing stablecoin. For example, DAI is probably the biggest contender right now that we're thinking of. And the reason that we're thinking about DAI over a different stablecoin is that DAI doesn't have the ability to be frozen by the DAI creators. You could definitely see a scenario potentially where, because we're issuing a private stablecoin, that some regulators might see that as not mixing with their regulatory environment, and pressure could be put on say USDT or USDC to freeze the particular accounts that we're backing oxUSD in. So we're looking at a number of options right now, but DAI is looking to be the kind of top contender at the moment. We're looking at a couple of other stablecoins as well. The reason we might not do the original idea I spoke about with kind of a basket of assets is that it's kind of technically hard to create a system like that where you have a dynamic balancing of all of these basket of assets, and a few projects like DAI have already done that for us. So yeah, those are the kind of the ways that we're looking at in terms of backing. So right now we don't think so, and the reason it wouldn't share it with Oxen is because then Oxen transactions would need to have oUSD mix-ins in them, and the likely result of that is that we vastly increase the Oxen transaction size to be able to do that, and vice versa would be true as well. So oUSD transactions would need to have Oxen outputs in them as well. So we're thinking of splitting the anonymity sets here so that there's an oUSD anonymity set and there's an Oxen anonymity set. That obviously does create problems because the oUSD anonymity set initially will be very small, and because there's no oxUSD block rewards, we would actually have to find a way to create those oxUSD block rewards so that we could actually give them to service nodes, because that in itself creates additional outputs that can be used as mix-ins in transactions. And we already have a massive history on Oxen of block rewards being created, and all of those are included in the anonymity set. So that's something that we don't have for oxUSD right now. So we're thinking about ways to do that, and I might talk about some of those ways later in the video. So I think initially we were looking a lot at how to, because the idea with oxUSD has always been to bring value from, say, the Ethereum network and then represent that value on the Oxen blockchain. And that process of kind of allowing the service node network or the Oxen network in general to know about transactions that are happening on Ethereum and also communicate transactions back to the Ethereum network, that's always been the trickiest part, I think. We're still discussing that internally, but I think that's where we've spent most of our design time, in terms of oxUSD. So the main method that we're looking at right now is creating a new tier of service nodes. So this would be something like a witness node that you can run. And that's probably going to be on top of running a service node. So if you are a service node, you can choose to operate this additional tier. And the way that we're looking at that right now is that tier would be locked in for a longer period of time. So the minimum stake period for a service node, you can kind of register a service node and then deregister it 15 days later, and your node will be unlocked. But what we're looking at with the kind of witnessing nodes is that you'd have to lock in your well, in this case it would be Oxen, your 15,000 Oxen for 180 days. And that creates a bit more stability around the network, and that's useful for this type of signatures that we're going to use to witness from the Ethereum network back into the Oxen network. And so how that kind of technically works is that there'll be a smart contract on the Ethereum network where DAI is deposited or a stablecoin is deposited. We're not entirely sure on how that's going to work yet. And then what happens is those nodes have Ethereum nodes running on them, the witness nodes that I was talking about before. And those witness nodes pick up transactions that are going into that smart contract, and then they can mint a consummate amount of, in this case, say oxUSD on the Oxen chain. So yeah, it's a process of creating a tier of nodes on the Oxen network that can witness transactions that happen on Ethereum and then can execute events on the Oxen blockchain related to those transactions. So that's how we get information in. So this is a little bit more complicated because the transactions that go in, they just have to be witnessed and you have to come to consensus on the Oxen network. The trickier part is relaying back your consensus on the Oxen network back into the Ethereum smart contract. So what we're looking at right now is using kind of Schnorr signatures, which is similar to what Chainflip is actually using. If you've read into the design there. So basically, it's like a multi-sig essentially, where we can represent the consensus of Oxen nodes, and then we can have that multi-sig signature be taken to an Ethereum kind of smart contract and then validated in that smart contract. And we're thinking about different ways to kind of shard up that validator network or the witnessing node network that I was talking about before, where we can have them to come to consensus on smaller parts of the transaction set, and if there's no disagreement, then things will go forward. So this is kind of like an optimistic system, but we're discussing this right now because that's probably the trickiest part, is relaying back that there has been consensus on the Oxen network to an Ethereum smart contract, which doesn't really understand anything about the Oxen network. So we have to find kind of smart ways to get that information back properly. So yeah, as I spoke about before, we are thinking right now about creating a different tier of service nodes, but that will be something that is on the service node network. So if you are a service node, you'll be offered an additional option to kind of transform your service node or add additional tasks to your service node and earn an additional reward for doing those tasks as well. So that would be being a witness node, and that means that you can witness transactions that are happening on the Ethereum network and also potentially send transactions or sign transactions in such a way that they can be transmitted back to the Ethereum network. So yeah, that's kind of the way that we're interacting with the service node network. This is something that we have been thinking about a lot, because I think in some of the other private stablecoins or some of the other stablecoins that we've seen that have been quite successful, they have a feature in their wallet where you can essentially switch between the native currency and then the stablecoin currency, and that naturally creates a fair bit of use, because there'll be Oxen holders, for example, who see the price going up and down, and they want to insure themselves against that kind of stability, especially if the price is going down. They want to get into something that's more stable than Oxen temporarily, and then when the price starts coming back up again, they might sell that stablecoin and come back into Oxen. So it kind of creates this base of users that are always kind of converting in between the coins to hedge themselves against volatility. So we think that is a really interesting use case to have. The problem with having a kind of an exchange inside of the wallet is it's regulatorily not as easy as it sounds. there are a lot of regulations around running exchanges, and depending on where you fall on that spectrum, whether it's an automatic market maker in the wallet, which is a lot easier, or it's a centralized exchange, that's a lot harder inside of the wallet. So we're thinking about ways that we could work with Chainflip, for example, to have an exchange between kind of the two coins in the wallet. But something that's definitely very preliminary right now, something that is a desirable feature, but we haven't worked out exactly how to do, or if we really want it yet either. So the major kind of way that we're looking at this, and this was mentioned in the original oUSD paper, was this idea that the DAI that is sent into the Ethereum smart contract, in this case, to generate new oxUSD, that DAI would be able to actually generate some sort of yield. And that would be through Ethereum kind of yield generating services like Compound, or one of these lending protocols that's offering about 7 to 8% APY on the DAI that's being deposited. So if we could generate yield from that DAI, we could use that DAI, or the yield generated from that DAI, to actually buy Oxen off the open markets and burn that Oxen. So it would be kind of like a tax on the people that were putting their DAI in. They'd still be able to get the exact amount out, but we would be kind of taking some of the yield that they could have potentially earned from that DAI and investing that in the Oxen ecosystem by buying and burning Oxen. So that's one of the major ways that we're looking at it. Maybe one of the simplest methods is just to charge a fee. So everyone who deposits DAI, they get like 0.999 oUSD or oxUSD if they deposited one DAI. So we take out a small amount, and then that small fee is used to buy Oxen and burn it as well. Or you could do the same thing when they're going out. They have oxUSD and they want their DAI back, or we charge them a small fee, and that gets used to buy and burn Oxen. So there's a few ways that we could look at this to benefit the Oxen ecosystem, but they tie in quite nicely into the use case from what we've seen. So it's actually quite different, or the ways that we're looking at it is actually quite different in construction. One of the main things that Haven does is uses a price oracle to decide what the price is between Haven and then their stablecoin oxUSD. That would not be the case in oxUSD. We wouldn't be using any price oracles to decide what the price is, and the backing for oxUSD wouldn't be in Oxen either. It would be in some stablecoin or a basket of assets that actually have market value. So in terms of the conversions, like what does that actually mean to the user? Haven has a experience for most users where the conversion will take, kind of 5 to 10 days. If you really want to have a lower fee option, you have to use the extended periods of time where they take this moving average and they give you the average price between oxUSD and Haven. In Oxen, what would happen is you would deposit existing stablecoins or existing assets into an Ethereum vault, and then you would get the exact or a very close value to those existing assets in oxUSD. And that process can happen as soon as the witness nodes witness that transaction on Ethereum and mint the transaction on the Oxen network. So not only is it faster, you also have kind of less price volatility depending on what happens over those 10 days. You're talking about hours in terms of the conversion between the stablecoin that you deposit and then the oxUSD that is minted. And we hope that creates a lot kind of finer or more liquid process between the stablecoins that we're creating. Which is something that we think that Haven has kind of lacked, is that ability to convert in and out of the stablecoin without having a large price impact on how much coins you had at the start of the trade. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things to go through. Like that's not necessarily the most succinct definition, but if you go through the rest of the video, you can start to pull out the threads on some of these things and understand why oxUSD is quite different from something like XHV. All right, thanks guys for listening to that. I guess it's important to say that this is kind of an open discussion process. We're really throwing out ideas to see what you guys think, and some of these ideas will definitely not end up in the final proposal as well. We're really trying to keep everyone informed of where the design discussion is on oxUSD. So yeah, if you have any comments, you have any ideas, chuck them in the comments below or send them to us on our session or our Telegram channels, and we'll be sure to kind of keep you in the loop about this. But But yeah, it's good to keep everyone in the know about this stuff. So thanks guys for listening.